we sacrifice the family. So sometimes if you just carry through on your mission, things aren't going well, it's going to be worth it in the long run.
All right, I'm here with the one and only coach, Al Scates. Coach, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
My name is Aaron Wexler, and this is another episode of Within the Game. And I'm here with my old coach, legendary men's volleyball coach for UCLA with 19 NCAA championships in 50 years, making you the most winningest coach in any team sport in the history of the NCAA. You're a legend and an icon, and in not just volleyball, but all of coaching. And for me, coach, this is a full circle moment because, you just meant a lot to me with my whole career and my success now with my business. So again, I appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
My
so
pleasure.
let's jump.
My pleasure.
All right, great. So let's jump right into the idea of this project, which is all about inspired living. What does that mean to you?
Well, during my career, I didn't feel like I was inspired. I just feel like I had three careers going on at once. I had family. I was a full-time teacher for 35 years while I was coaching and coaching. And basically, I just tried to do the best job I could. Starting in the morning, it was teaching. And I taught from 8 to 3. I tried to do a good job with the kids, taught second through 8th grade. And I really loved it. I enjoyed it. And then I got over UCLA. It was about coaching. And I tried to do the best job I could there. Then when I got home, it was about family. And then when everybody was asleep, I would start on coaching again. And that's when the family would go to sleep about 10. That's when I'd look at the tapes or the video on my TV. Or if you want to go back to the early years, the 16 millimeter film, I'd start the projector, splice it into 6 rotations, look at rotate. So I was just, I had this list of things to do every day. Now, if it's being inspired is an extraordinary effort, yeah, okay, I was inspired. I was getting 4 hours sleep a night for 6 days a week. And if I was lucky, I got 8 on Sunday night, if time allowed. But my father told me when I was a kid, after I told him I wanted a bike, and he says, well, you got to earn. You can mow the lawn, I'll give you this much. He came out and looked at the job, and he says, I don't care what you do. He says, but I want you to do the best job you can at whatever you do. You go back and edge the lawn again. This is how we're going to do it. And so I just tried to do a good job at whatever I was doing at the moment. I had a work ethic. And if I didn't like to do something, I definitely wasn't inspired at that particular thing I was doing. But on the other hand, if I enjoyed it, or I was working hard at it. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love that. And, I remember my recruiting trip with you. I don't know if you remember it. You probably had so many guys, on different trips, but you inspired me that moment because I think we were in like Kirchhoff somewhere, and it was you and Brian Rofer and you were eating burritos from Rubio's, and I was there. And I think I asked you like, oh, what is your culture all about? And you just looked at me and you go, I like to win. And then you went back to your burrito. and I was like, okay, wow, that's pretty good.
Well, that's funny. The culture became a real buzzword about the time you came along. If I had to describe a culture, Mike Seeley said my culture was based on Darwinism, the survival of the fittest.
That's right.
And he may have been right,
Yeah.
because the way I structured my practices was there was somebody won the drill, somebody lost the drill. I always kept points. And that made the players work harder. And if the first team was losing to the second team, then somebody from the first team was going down to the second team, and somebody from the second team was coming up. And that person may never go back. That
Right.
happened on numerous occasions.
Right.
I remember the first time when St. John Smith was a freshman in 76, he didn't dive for a ball. And I sent him behind the blue curtain where the third and fourth team were practicing with different coaches. I didn't bring him back for 2 weeks. And he went for every ball as hard as he could the rest of his career. But on the other hand, I like to enjoy practices. I mean, I laughed at every practices. I had a good time. I enjoyed practices when I was a player. I enjoyed them when I was a coach. Have some fun. Okay.
Yeah. And I want to expand on that because those practices, I remember them, you know, they were frustrating for me because I was definitely on maybe the third or fourth team for the majority of my time. But I also remember, you know, you coming over to that blue curtain at the last part of practice and going, Wexler, come on. And so I had to stay ready, it's frustrating to not be seen for a whole practice, but, you know, I knew in the back of my mind, okay, coach might come over and yell my name. So I got to stay ready, and I want to talk a little bit more about that, creating a culture of excellence, because whoever's listening to this, I want this to be relatable so that they can take some of this information and implement it into their practices or, their life. It doesn't even have to be sports. Right. So like creating a culture of excellence and, that daily competition. Can you just expand on that and like how that really shaped the culture there at UCLA?
Well, first of all, I think, as you know, I wasn't there for the first part of practice.
Right.
Because for those 35 years I was teaching, my last class either got over at 3:00 or 3:10, and our practice started at 3.
Mm-hmm.
So the coaches ran a circle drill for most of those years. And at least once a week, the players would be doing 300 sit-ups and 300 push-ups. Not all at once, but I'm just getting over the coronavirus, so my throat's a little weak.
Take your time.
Okay, so I wouldn't get there until 3:45, and then we get the balls out and have a hard practice. So the guys were tired. I remember Jeff Nygaard, his spine would be bloody every time I'd come in from doing those 300 sit-ups. He was a little skinny his freshman year, but he added a lot of weight and played on 3 Olympic teams. But it was tough. It was not easy to be on the team. Yet players stayed on the team even when they were not on the first court. And they wanted to be on the first court. Everybody was trying. Sometimes I wouldn't go behind the blue curtain to get a player. I just asked the coach to send me an outside hitter because he knew who was playing well that day.
Sure.
Or send me a libero.
Sure.
And that worked.
Yeah.
And I'd send somebody down to him. And if that player didn't perform well, I'd kick him out of practice, which rarely happened, like once or twice. So.
Yeah. And speaking of assistant coaches, the next segment I have is on leadership. Obviously you had, maybe the best program in NCAA history in really any team sport. But a lot of that success most likely came from your assistant coaches, right? I mean, Brian Rofer, Mike Seeley, John Spraw, Jeff Nygaard, those are some names that I remember. Can you talk about your assistants and how important having a really good assistant coaching staff is?
Well, I always surrounded myself with the best people.
Yeah. Right.
When I started coaching, I coached by myself. Well, I only had about 8 players, and it was easy to handle 8 players by myself. Plus, I wasn't making any money. I wanted to be an amateur so I could play in the Olympics. If you made money coaching, you're a professional. So I finally found enough players where I could use another coach. I asked one of my teammates, Rudy Swara, who was playing on the U.S. team with me, to be a coach, assist me. He was a full-time teacher like myself, and I was making a little money, but he was making less than me. See, I made more coaching football at a Catholic school when I was a senior at UCLA. I made $1,000 for a few months' work in the fall than I did at UCLA. I won my first championship at 65. It was called the USA Volleyball Collegiate Championship. I made $400. That was my third year of coaching. Yeah, $400. I got a $200 raise. So that explains why I taught for 35 years.
Sure.
Because I was only a 20% employee. See, the NCAAs didn't start until 1970. So we won those 19 championships between 1970 and 2006. And I always had great coaches. Always. I tried to find the best ones. One of my best coaches was Denny Klein.
Mm-hmm.
He was amazing. And I cut him his freshman year, but he wouldn't go away. He came back and kept stats. And when he finished, he just was an amazing coach. And I always tried to get the best ones. I mean, I recruited coaches who weren't even coaches. I recruited a great coach, JT Wanger.
Yeah, JT.
Who was a commodities broker back in Chicago. I called him up when Mike Seeley left to go coach the women at Hawaii in the middle of the season. I got on the line right away, called JT because I knew he'd be a great coach.
Yeah.
And he came out. Yeah. And John Spirall, he was going to medical school and he wanted to go. So he was working down at the med center and he'd come by and volunteer a little. But when I got the head coaching job at the World University Games in Sicily, I says, John, you want to be my assistant coach? He wasn't even my assistant coach at UCLA at the time. That's how he got started. I took him to Mallorca in 99 again as an assistant coach.
And coach, what makes a good assistant coach? This is for any head coaches out there who might be listening to this.
Well, for me, I always wanted a coach who could coach everything. I like to be coaching up the first 6 mainly, although sure. I'd coach everybody on my court. But I like my first assistant to be able to coach the second team in all aspects. The setters, liberos, the outside hitters, the middles. Then I only brought in a specialist coach one time to do one specific thing. That was a volunteer, and that was Walt Kerr. He was really good at jump serving. Mm-hmm. And that was a big part of why we won the 2006 championship. I mean, he had 2 of his kids, or maybe 3 of them on the team at the time. So he was motivated, and we were serving real well by the time we beat Penn State 3 straight. Started out 12-12. And had to win 8 on the road. But I've always looked for the best possible people. You know, Karch was an assistant coach for me in 83 when we won an NCAA championship. They called him, he was a graduate assistant coach. We could give him I think we could give him a full ride if they hadn't graduated yet and they became an assistant coach. So I had some great players that were coaches too. So that was his first championship coaching right there in 83. But anyway, I always tried to find players who I thought would be good coach and get them started. And
sure.
sometimes I had a boy named Toshi Toyota coach on my first NCAA championship team. The first year it was a championship, 1970. Somehow the Daily Bruin put out a notice that I was having open tryouts in the men's gym. This was not fall of 1968. I didn't even know this notice went out. I didn't authorize it. I walked into the gym for practice. There were 100 guys in the gym. And then I found out what happened. And my assistant, Rudy Swore, and I had to clear the gym so we could do something. I mean, we had we had matches to get ready for. So I saw this 5'7", looked like a Japanese or Korean kid. And I says, "What do you do?" He says, "I'm a setter." And I gave him a ball and I said, "Okay, jump set against the wall." And he started jump setting against the wall. He looked pretty good. And I went around, I got back to him in an hour and he was still jump setting against the wall. And I said, "Have you stopped yet?" He said, "No." I says, "Okay, you're on the team." And he was amazing. We set up a whole new offense based on very quick setting. He was captain of his team in Japan, Toshi Toyota. May he rest in peace. He just passed. But he set the ball so fast. I left-handed Kirk Kilgore running quick sets, and I'd have the team pass the ball left side to Toshi, and Kirk would go up left-handed on the right side, and we'd send him these fast 31s. He didn't see a block all season on that ball. And that was all Toshi. So in 70, I had him train the setters. We won the championship pretty easy. I think we beat Long Beach in the finals. But yeah, if I see somebody who can be a coach, I want them on my program. I let some go away because I'd have to remove a coach. You know, the NCAA has rules about how many coaches you can have. And so I let some good ones go when there was no room for it. But you know, the key is, if you want to win an NCAA championship, you got to have talent. And since men only get 4.5 grant and aids, you can only spend a full ride for one blue chipper. So you have to recruit players with potential who everybody's not after yet, but you see something in him and he's going to develop later. So you got to get one or two of those guys.
Yeah, sure.
And they got to hate to lose, and they want to work hard. You know, that's a great combination. So it starts with the talent of the players, but second is the talent of the coaching staff. And you know, that can change over years. You could have a guy that's working hard and valuable, but maybe over many years he's not the same guy. And you know, you have to make a change at that point. That's very difficult to do.
Sure.
And then the third thing is you got to have a practice environment. This is on the men's side. I'm not sure the women could do this, where everybody has to compete hard the whole practice. Now, at the level we're at, we're not isolating skills. Everything's game-like. I mean, we're not hitting off a stand at a player. I mean, that is the most ridiculous thing you can do. That only makes that player good at digging balls hit off a stand. But if somebody can't pass at all, then you give them a coach and you go one-on-one, teach them to pass. You don't do this with all the players because it's just ridiculous. I mean, at a lower level, yeah, you have to teach them the skills differently. I'm talking about NCAA ball here.
Sure.
So the third thing, getting back to it, you have to create a practice environment where there's winners and losers. You keep points on every drill. And that keeps the players competing hard. And they know if they're not competing hard, there's going to be changes. Somebody else is going to take their spot. So
Yeah.
it's hard in the beginning because when I started, I had to practice. My coach had to practice because we didn't have enough players. I was recruiting football players, basketball players, any athlete I could find, teaching them how to play. And when I started, there was one gym. We only had 2 hours practice a week on Wednesday nights after freshman basketball. When Poly was built in '65, and after I brought in the gold medal Japanese women and the silver medal Japanese men, and USC to play a triple header and put 5,000 people in the stands, there was no NCAA volleyball. When our athletic director, J.D. Morgan, saw 5,000 paying customers, he said, Al, and he was there that night. I've never seen a volleyball match, but I can tell you right now, it's going to be an NCAA sport, and I'm going to make it an NCAA sport. And he did. He did. So the third thing, competitive practices.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much else you need.
No, that's great. That's great. I actually wanted to mention, you actually gave me my first job at coaching when I was a player, when I was a freshman. You were like, hey, Aaron, do you want to coach the camps in the summer? Yeah. And that really, really helped me, because obviously, a little money was great, but I fell in love with coaching, and so I would recommend, and I'm asking you if you would recommend any head coaches out there, men or women, to create that culture of camps, right, in the summer, right? It's not just a money maker, but it helps develop coaches at a young age, yeah. Right?
How many camps were we doing when you work in camps?
Oh man, a lot. I mean,
10?
Maybe it was a little overwhelming. Actually, it was like, it was a lot.
How many states did you go to?
No, I didn't travel for camps. I just did the camps at Poly Pavilion.
Oh, the Poly. We were just in Poly then.
The Poly camps, yeah.
Oh,
but
yeah. Okay.
But, I was 18. I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
I was a freshman, but that really helped me kind of like open my eyes to like sharing the game, right? Paying the game forward.
Oh, yeah.
And that really helped me. So, anyone listening out there who's a head coach or assistant coach, I would say, and coach, feel free to jump in on this, but those camps are important. They're important to develop coaches from players, right?
Do you know that before I just did camps in Poly, I did camps in New York, I did camps in Ohio,
all over, huh?
Texas, New Mexico, as well as clinics all over the United States before I did camps. One of my 12 campers in Buffalo, New York, was named Greg Harasimovich.
Okay.
12 years old. He was a baseball player. Came out, played at Northridge, and became my assistant coach. First time he ever played volleyball was at Buffalo, New York. I used to do camps in Texas. Well, we had no boys show up for camp. We'd have 360 girls. And then I'd get 10 boys, and then 20 boys, and then 30 boys. By the time the coach took those camps away from me in Texas and ran her own, instead of doing 3 sessions with 360, I think she had one with 50. But anyway, we did other camps in Texas. We lost that site and went around and did some other camps. We had boys coming out to play volleyball. So we grew the sport. They'd see my boys playing, my men playing. And I guess they'll go home and tell their brothers about it, because next year we'd have boys showing up.
That's cool. That's cool.
So it was called co-ed camps, but in California, we used to run camps at UCSD, and we'd have 36 outdoor courts on the grass, and we'd have half boys and girls, but only in California. The rest of the places we had to grow the sports for the boys.
Sure.
And later, when Title IX came in, and 72 and the girls got 12-4 full rides and they dropped us to 4.5. Girls were playing volleyball all over. I mean, and I'm glad to see how well they're doing now.
Yeah, no, actually, that's a great transition to. I want to go back to what you were talking about, coaching Karch, because Karch just won a gold medal as the head coach of the women's national team in the Olympics, and I had him on here, and Karch is, Karch is amazing. Could you just speak to Karch and who he was as a player and now and a person, and now as a gold medal winning coach?
Well, I got to tell you, Denny Klein, Karch Karai, St. John Smith were some of the hardest workers I ever had in practice. I think Storm Mike Norman was a pretty good hard worker too. But these guys, Karch went 100% every day. And then Rick Neuheisel, who was our football coach, I was talking to Rick one time. We were both broadcasters at the same time for the Pac-12 network after we both retired from coaching. And he was telling me when he was a student that the volleyball team would play a game called quarters with the football team, something about flipping a quarter in a beer. And if you didn't do it, you had to drink the beer.
Sure.
And he said, Karch was the best he ever saw at the game. I didn't even know he was doing this game. Whatever, he might have been doing it all night, but when he came to practice, he practiced harder. Well, him and St. John as freshmen, when they did the circle drill, they would lap the rest of the players. They would compete against each other. I told St. John he had to partner up with Karch because he was going to be a starting setter. We ran a 6-2. So he got the hit in the front row and he sat in the back. And I told St. John, I says, we can win a championship if you bring this kid along. I never saw him play. I said, I just recruited him over a hamburger at Denny's in Calabasas. It was probably an NCAA violation. I'm not sure, but he's coming, him and his dad, for a hamburger at Denny's. But I heard he's great. So you're going to partner up with him during the circle drill, during everything. And I'd come in late on that circle, Joe, and then be sprinting past some of the other guys like Steve Salmons, became an Olympian, and trying to get it done. And Karch tried to have a perfect practice. Never had one, to my knowledge. No, he never had one. We were vocal in those days during practice.
Coach, what is a perfect practice, if you don't mind expanding on that?
Well, for Karch, I never had a perfect practice. I've had a lot of practices I enjoyed and where the players worked hard and I've had a good time. And but for him, it was not making a mistake. Like
sure.
Digging every ball, making every set perfect. It's an impossible thing to do, of course.
Right.
That's what he liked to try to do. I mean, I didn't ask him about it, but I'm sure that's what he was doing. And he would yell. We'd have players yelling at each other in practice on their own team and across the net. I loved it.
Yeah.
It was, and all these players, Dave Saunders, Steve Salmons, Doug Pertee, all these guys that played together during this era, when they got to the Olympic team, they brought this energy and competitiveness. And we had guys from SC the same way. That's why we won the gold in 84 and 88, because these guys were so damn competitive. And we had a great coach, Doug Beal, of course, who really did it first in 84. Then Marv Dunphy got it. He was smart enough not to change anything. He had all the same players. They ran all Doug's stuff and we won another gold medal. And a lot of guys would come in and say, well, we're going to do it this way. Hey, it's not broke, don't fix it,
Right.
But Karch, he was just so focused.
Yeah.
The players used to call him the machine. I don't know if they call him that to his face or not, but a few of them have told me he was the machine.
So I want to jump in. I asked Karch, and I ask everybody that comes on my podcast here about the flow, and I want to ask you about that. And I'll tell you what he said. And we can define the flow because it could be something unattainable, right? But I remember one practice myself, one practice out of my whole career playing for you, where I was in the flow. I was just like, I couldn't miss, you know, and it felt so good. But that was only one practice. And I asked Karch about it, and I was like, hey, have you been in the flow? Can you practice being in the flow? And he told me, he's like, well, I've been in the flow maybe 5 or 6 times my whole career, maybe. But he said he didn't focus on finding the flow. He just made adjustments, which I feel like you did for your whole career. You, like, even game time coaching, you were just always looking at the other side of the net, making adjustments. So I believe that's kind of like the main part of champion mindset, is making adjustments. But I would like to ask you about the flow. First of all, do you think the flow is something attainable? And did you ever find yourself in the flow as a coach?
I found myself, I call it the zone.
Yeah, the zone.
Slow motion zone.
Sure.
Happened to me 3 times in my career, 2 times as a player and once as a coach. I'll start with the first time as a player. In the beginning, when I played for UCLA, volleyball for UCLA, we didn't have a league. We played it in tournaments at YMCAs.
Mm-hmm.
And these tournaments would start at 8 in the morning. And if you were in the finals, sometimes you'd be in the gym till 2 o'clock. Everybody else would go home. They'd lose. It was double elimination.
Sure.
You'd play in gyms with 2 courts with a bunch of teams. First time it happened to me, I was at the Long Beach YMCA, and I was playing for UCLA against a guy I coached at Vets Park in Culver City named Tom Ryan. May he rest in peace. Tom was the leading basketball rebounder in the nation for Loyola University. He was leading the nation in rebound. I may have been playing for the Hollywood Y, I think. I think it was the Hollywood Y. Anyway, I'd go up to Spike and I'd see Tom. Tom was a tall man. And I don't know how tall, but I could see his hands above the net. I could see his fingers above the net. And I'd go up to hit, and I'd pick out a finger to hit the ball off of. And I'd hit it out of bounds. Or if there was a hole in the block, I could see that hole, and I'd go up and I'd throw it in the hole. But it was all happening in slow motion. And my vision was perfect. I could just hit it with perfect control wherever I wanted to. The next time that happened was in the World Championships in what was then known as Czechoslovakia. I was playing against the Chinese team. I was a middle blocker. And basically the same thing happened. Now, I mean, as far as calling the right plays and telling our team that they were going to, on a good pass, they were going to set their left side hitter and he was going to hit it cross court and the middle would make the move. I mean, I did that stuff all the time, and that's not the zone. But the zone in the 1993 championships, Northridge versus UCLA, I knew where the setter was going to set the ball on Northridge's team before he set it. And I would call out the set so my middle blocker could get a step. And I would just call out, go, quick, 5, red. And I knew where he was going to set. Now, I'd studied the tape a lot. I don't know how I knew. I don't know, but I knew. So you could say that was a coaching zone. But as far as knowing what the other players were going to do and the other coach was going to call, I knew that because I played against these coaches for so long. I knew what lineup they were going to come out with, how if they were going to flip their lineup or not, so I could get the matchups. I knew that every time they lost a game in game 2, that the match would be flipped because I always picked up the score sheet whenever I left the other gym, and the coach didn't get a copy. I'd pick up his too because he did. It was just going in the trash can. So when I left the floor, and then I'd go back and I reconstruct the match off the score sheet. I mean, I had video too, and so I knew what all the coaches were going to do.
Sure.
I knew that if you played Marv Dunphy's team in January, nothing was going to change. NCAA finals, it was all going to be the same. Why? Because he got so good at what he was doing, he just didn't change it. His teams are so well coached, there was no point in changing it. They weren't going to get any better. And particularly if he had a returning team. I don't know. I do remember I don't know if you could call that being in the zone or just experience or flow, as you call it.
Yeah.
Just being experienced.
Yeah.
And knowing what the other people were going to do. And after I saw a player enough, I mean, in 74, I knew the Santa Barbara players so well. It was unbelievable. They were the best team. I sent my old coach, Rudy Swore, up there. Art Galliant called me, an administrator from UCSB in charge of the athletic department, see if I wanted a full-time coaching job. He knew I was teaching full-time and he wanted me to come to Santa Barbara and just be a full-time coach. That was 1970. After our 1970 season, I told Rudy, listen, you're not making any money, but I'll get you a full-time men's job. There were no women's jobs. There was no women's volleyball. There was club women's volleyball. Heck, there wasn't hardly any men's volleyball at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was growing, but slowly. So anyway, Rudy took the job up there. We played him in the 74 NCAA championships in Santa Barbara. And I put that in my book, what the Santa Barbara players were going to do. And that's another reason I didn't get much sleep. I had to stay up and write the book between 10 and 2 in the morning if I wasn't going over video.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I kind of forget what you asked me there.
Yeah, no problem. I just to finish up the whole idea of the flow. You know, nowadays, coach, in sports, not just volleyball, but there's a big school of thought about mindfulness training. You know, meditation, visualization. You know, does that stuff have any merit? You know, in your mind, and do you think?
Oh
yeah.
I could go to bed at night as a player and think about something I wanted to do in practice or in the match. Say it was a Friday night against certain players. The move, I was a middle blocker. I was all about making the move to intercept the block.
Right.
And how I was going to do it. And I could come out the next day and do it.
Yeah.
I didn't need to practice. I'm playing golf now. I'm actually a terrible golfer. I had a year of chemo and my shoulders got blown out. And so in 2018, I could still hit a ball 240, you know, my best shot off the tee, which is pretty good for an old geezer.
Very good. Yeah.
And then after the chemo, I could only hit it 160. So now I have to learn technique. Before I was just using the strength I had remaining in my body over the top, terrible swing. So now I have to think about how to hit it like you're supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have time to practice. I walk the course 5 days a week when I don't have the virus. And I'll be getting back to that. But I can just think about something and then get a little better at it.
Yeah.
So
that visualization is such a skill, and sports help with that so much. But I just feel like it's so relatable, no matter what you're doing in life, just to be able to, you know, think about what you want, like the desired outcome, like you were talking about the moves that you were making, like to see it in your mind. I just,
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in it. When I went back and volunteered for you, for Mike Seeley, 2011, and we won the championship that year. We were doing a lot of visualization with the team, and I think it really helps. So anyone listening to this, just make sure that you implement some sort of visualization. It doesn't have to be like a meditation or a long drawn out thing, but like training the players' minds to think about what they, with the desired outcome first, right?
Yeah. And when I was coaching, I was the head coach of the U.S. Pan American and zone team in 1971. And we were practicing at Santa Monica College. USA Volleyball couldn't get a site. So I made Bert DeGroot, who was administrator at Santa Monica College and a great coach at Santa Monica College, my assistant. And so we could use their balls and their floor. I couldn't get in at the men's gym. They wanted the charges. So anyway, I got some cameras and video cameras, and if we were serving or jump serving, whatever we're doing, they could just come over and look at the camera and see what they were doing wrong. I think John Sparrod does that at practice every day now. And I thought that helped them. I mean, they actually got to see it and then try it again and see it and again. I didn't have much of a budget to do that at UCLA at the time, so we didn't do it. Yeah. But I did it with the national team. We didn't have a budget either. We had less of a budget. I don't know how I got those cameras. Probably through Santa Monica College. Yeah, that's right.
Coach, I'd like to transition and talk about Coach Wooden. A big part of this project, a big part of the inspiration that I had to create my own pyramid of inspired living, which I'm going to be publishing soon, came from his pyramid of success, and I know you go back with Coach Wooden. Your office was next to his for a long time. Could you talk about Coach Wooden and his impact on you personally, and obviously UCLA?
Well, yes, I didn't know Coach Wooden until he retired, because we both practiced at the same time, 3:00 in the afternoon, and I wasn't there during the day. But after he retired, when we weren't practicing, he was there, and he'd come in my office and I'd go into his. But here as a young man, he influenced me. He had a basketball book called Modern Basketball. And I read that book, and about 26 pages were on coaching. And I learned so much from that book. Where I really learned how to coach, though, was at Vets Park in Culver City, where I'd actually coach 10 and under, 12 and under, 14 and under, and 16 year and under, in football, hardball, track and field, various sports. That's where I learned to coach myself. But then I read his book, and it was really good stuff. Mm-hmm. And I still have it underlined in the other room. I showed it to him after we got to know each other. And the other thing Coach Wooden did that I didn't know about until we were on a committee in Revival, Illinois. And it was good to get on this committee because they would promote your sport if you got on their sports committee. And for example, I did a video using Toshi Toyota and some other great players I had. And they made 10,000 copies of the video and sent them to high school for boys volleyball coaches so they could look at this video and how to do the drills correctly. And I had some great women players off the 84 Olympic team on that program too, in the video. But anyway, I'm sitting with Coach Wooden having lunch, Sue and I and Coach Wooden. And I told him the story of how Keith Erickson played volleyball for me one year. when Keith was playing basketball for him, and he told Keith he couldn't play volleyball. Well, Keith walked into the gym. It was 1964, and I just formed a new volleyball league. And SC was in it, Santa Monica College, and UC Riverside and Redlands, and I don't know, whoever we could find that had a team. And we're playing Santa Monica College for the championship in the men's gym of the league. Santa Monica had the best coach, Bert DeGroot, and he practiced 5 days a week from 3 to whenever he wanted to. I was still struggling to get a couple of nights in the men's gym because Paulie wasn't built. You know, I started off with one night. I don't know how many nights we were practicing there. So just before the game, Keith shows up with his volleyball uniform and says, "Can I play, coach?" And I says, "Well, you know, Coach Wooden doesn't want you to play." He says, "I really want to play." And Santa Monica is better than us because they're better trained. I'd probably practice in one night a week for 2 hours still. But Keith is an amazing talent. He went to the Olympics in '64 as a volleyball player and played 15 years in the NBA too afterwards. So I says, we had a Daily Bruin reporter. I grabbed the kid and I said, "Listen, you can't put Keith's name in the Bruin tomorrow. You got that?" "Yes, sir. Yes, sir." I says, "Okay, suit up." We beat him. Keith is amazing. Next day, I have a lunch break. I'm just down the street in Beverly Hills teaching. I go into Coach Wooden's trailer. They're building a new facility for athletics. He's not there because he goes down to lunch in the village. I tried to get there before he left. JD Morgan comes out and says, he's the athletic director. "What are you doing here?" Because he knows I'm teaching. That's his excuse for not paying me anything, making me a 10% employee at the time, or whatever it was. So I said, "I'm looking for Coach." "Why?" I said, "Well, I played Keith." He grabs me, takes me in his office. He says, he's going to kick Keith off the team. You know, Keith might be our captain next year. I says, "Listen, I'm thinking, you know, you're paying me $400. I can go coach football, make 1,000. I said, "Why don't I resign?" I didn't know what I wanted to coach yet. I want to be a basketball coach. I already been a football coach. This volleyball gig, I mean, it was, my wife wanted the house, you know, I got to earn here, you know, I got to start earning. And so I resigned. I wrote it out. The next day, JD calls me at home, says, "Well, I've reconsidered. I'm tearing this up and I'm giving you a raise." Okay. I'll be back then. Okay. I tell this story to Coach Wooden. It's, I don't know, a long time later. And he says, "Oh yeah, JD showed me that. I tore it up." He tore it up. And he never talked to Keith about it. He let it slide. And so he's the reason that I'm still coaching volleyball.
That's
the
cool.
AD wanted to fire me.
That's cool.
And I would have gone on to something else, I'm sure.
That speaks to his character.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, we'd mainly talk about things like baseball. He loved baseball. Talk about the Dodgers. And he coached a lot of sports back when he was a high school English teacher. You know, I think he did coach baseball as one of them. I think he coached track and field, basketball.
Could you speak to the pyramid of success and how that impacted you?
Well, see, that didn't really impact me. What impacted me was watching his practices. If I got in and watched some of his practice and how fast everything happened and how he never stopped and had a meeting and talked to the players. He just let them work the whole time, and how he manages to exhaust them in 2 hours and really get them in shape. That's because he didn't stop them all the time and talk to them. He talked to them while they were playing. And he did it with verbal cues. He'd say, no, you make your pass like that. And he'd show them once or twice and talk to them while they're moving. And they got it. And that's how I sped up my practices.
That's cool.
See, by watching him. And by the time I got to know him, we just talked about stuff he liked to talk about. Like he loved to watch women's basketball because technically they were better than the men. And a lot about baseball. And I played baseball. I used to pitch every Sunday in Culver City. I'd play volleyball all day Saturday, and then I'd go out and pitch 9 innings every Sunday. We were always the home team, and we'd play the Dodger rookies or whoever they'd send out that week, whoever our manager got. The old black players who used to be, they'd travel as all black guys. Or whoever showed up. We never knew who we were playing. I'd throw 9 every week.
Coach, could you talk a little bit about the Pyramid of Inspired Living that I sent you? And if you don't have it in front of you, I could just rattle off some of the values there. And if any of them, just if you want to speak to any of them, there's family, there's clarity.
Okay, let's start with health.
Health, right.
I'm going to add number 4 to the 3 things on winning an NCAA championship. Number
cool.
4 is cut back on the weight training and the intensity of practices before the elimination games start, before the conference championships start. And your players will actually jump higher and be stronger at that time for you backing off the exercises. A lot of coaches train their teams harder at the end. Players have to mend. Their shoulders have to feel good. Those nagging injuries have to feel good. And this is the time to do it. So back off at the end. I didn't even practice the day of the championships for many, many years. And when I did practice, we just do a few serves, and I made practice optional. I'd rather have them fresh. That's being healthy. Okay, right. I'll add the 5th rule, going back to the beginning of the program.
All right.
Only have one rule. Don't have a bunch of stupid rules where if a player breaks the rule, you have to penalize them. The number 1 rule. Do you know the number 1 rule?
Remind me.
Don't do anything to embarrass the university or the team.
That's right.
That's all you need.
That's right.
My whoever I reported to wanted to see my list of rules, so I put them in a drawer and changed the date. 20 bogus rules for the administrator because they like to have a lot of rules. But that's the only time the players never saw those rules. I only told them one rule. So those are the 5 things. Okay, this is health. Okay, we got health done. Love. Well, here's the thing. You gotta love your family. And I never showed my players love during the season until I graduated. Then I become friends with my players after they graduate. If they want that relationship, I was there then. So some of my players are my best friends now. I play golf with St. John every Friday. Denny Klein has remained one of my best friends throughout these years. And he's come and driven me to my last 2 birthday parties that Greg Harasimovich throws me my 80th and 82nd. 81, we didn't have one because of the virus. But he knows I might have a little tequila, so he comes out to my place and chauffeurs me to the party, and of course is invited too. Gets me back home safe. So that's nice. So I reserve the love for the players later because I don't like all of my players the same. I mean, it's hard to say this. It's amazing. I love my players, But I'm not going to show them any of that because I want to be so objective on who I'm choosing. I want the best combinations. I only had one goal every year. That was win an NCAA championship. And hell, we won 19 of them in 36 years with 6 runner-ups. That's pretty good. And I couldn't get emotionally involved with players. Now, certain players who needed to talk to me, they'd come to my office and talk to me and tell me all their problems. And I'm not going to tell you who those players were. And I try to help them in that regard. You know, St. John's first job I gave him was teaching volleyball at the beach club. He never played beach volleyball. That's where he learned to play beach volleyball. Then he became king of the beach.
Mm-hmm.
His mother was a widow and had, I think, 6 kids. And was a substitute teacher, Mary Lou Smith. And then I talked to the athletic director at the time. He was Bob Fisher. He made her a full-time administrative assistant or secretary. And she got medical and dental for all those kids. And she was great. She was great at what she did. I could walk into a room of donors. She would tell me who they all were before I talked to them. I didn't know who the hell they were. I mean, some of them I did, but she knew everyone in the room. So that worked out. But anyway, afterwards, like Greg Herzimovich, the last assistant coach I ever hired, we played chess about once a week. We were for a while until COVID came along. And cigars, chess, and tequila. It's a good outing. But anyway, okay, love. There you go, love.
Yeah.
Oh, gratitude and appreciation. Yeah, I spoke about the gratitude and appreciation I have for these guys. You know, some of the guys I most appreciate, my favorite team was the 2006 team, because none of those guys started right away.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys, some of them didn't start until they were 5th-year seniors on that team. And to look at how far that team came. We took them to Italy in 2005. And some of those guys realized they weren't that bad playing against professional Italian players. I think we had 10 matches on the road. See, with a women's team, you can't do that. You can only have women together for like 2 or 3 matches, and it's time to come home, I think. But these guys, I don't know. I always knew it was easier coaching men than women.
Yeah.
I coached one women's team in '74. LA Renegades, we won the US Open Championship. But I only coached them at the Nationals. Dr. Kong Peng Lee coached him during the season. And he asked me to help him out at the Nationals. He was a dear friend of mine. And so that was of course, I coached girls and boys together, 2nd through 8th graders, my entire career, 35 years. So I coached a lot of girls.
Yeah.
I found them the same as boys. I never could understand why girls coaches, when I used to watch them, would do things like get on the stand and hit 100 balls to these girls. Why not teach them like the men, you know? Why do they just do slide steps to block? Why don't they cross over and run the block? Of course, Hugh McCutcheon, when he coached the women on the national team, he just coached them like using the same techniques. I looked at him, I knew he was using the same techniques. I never talked to him about it, but you could tell.
Yeah.
Same tactics. He finally got it. I mean, he got it from the beginning, but yeah.
Coach, there's 2 more things I want to touch on, but this is kind of a big moment for me. Since you mentioned the 2006 team, you know, I was on that team, and I was a senior that year. And I want to talk to you about commitment. For anyone listening that you know, might be thinking about leaving a team or is really frustrated, like I was really frustrated that year. And, I left the team, and this is kind of difficult for me to talk about publicly, but I feel like I'm at a place now where, I made peace with it. I came into your office and apologized after the fact, after winning the championship. But, now I'm at a place where I made peace with that. And I really want to help anyone who might be listening, or a coach or a parent who has a kid that is just going through a tough time. For me, it was, I had my second knee surgery, and I let myself use that as an excuse, to be like, hey, I can't do this anymore. But really, looking back, it was Tony Kerr, jumping into my spot and being better than me, and congratulations to him. He's a great player, and Shiguri as well. But before that, Schrader and I were like battling, and Schrader had the spot, all-time dig leader, UCLA. But I bring that up because you mentioned the 2006 team, and it haunted me for a long time. But like I said, now I'm at a place where I want to help. I want to help someone else who might go through that. I'd like you to speak to commitment. Speak on commitment and what that really means, as a player and as a coach, and as being a part of the team, right? And like, if you're going through a tough time, whatever it may be, it could be a fresh, maybe a better guy's coming in, maybe you got an injury, but I wish I'd stayed committed, and I wish I just, stuck with it, So could you just speak to that a little bit?
Well, okay. Personally, I guess I can use myself as an example where it was costing me money to coach at UCLA because I only had a budget of $100 my first year. And I spent more than that on entry fees. I spent more than that on volleyballs. And we didn't have much money. I mean, I was a teacher in Santa Monica, full-time teacher. I was going to school, getting my administration credential. My goals were to be a public school superintendent of schools. And that's what I was doing. I was going to be a PE teacher, a vice principal, principal, superintendent. But first I needed the credential, and then I could start moving up. But I wasn't earning anything. And somehow I saw the benefit of continuing. When I was with the national team in Mexico City, I found out that the Japanese were on tour. They were going to stop in LA, and the wheels started turning. Well, if I can get them into Poly, if I can go to JD and say, if you don't charge, you can keep the receipts, and I can give you 5,000 people. I got this idea, but I still wasn't earning. I went through years, and I just decided when it came time that I got a full ride to Harvard to get a doctorate degree. And this was Dick Bertain offered that to me. He was a personnel director of Santa Monica, graduated from Harvard, said, you can take a leave, get your degree, come back and be an administrator, you'll be on your way. I had to make a choice. And I just decided, okay, this isn't doing anything for me now, but if I can complete this mission, I can build the sport, I can make it an NCAA sport, I can open it up for others, and I can popularize the game. I just decided I was going to do that. And it was a lot of sacrifice for my family, for myself. My wife, I mean, I was gone a lot. She raised the 3 kids. I mean, when I was with them, I was with them. But that coaching gig in 71, I was on the road for 6 weeks. The first house, we bought a house. I was in Havana, Cuba. I didn't know if we got the house. My wife was pregnant. She moved in. It was all done by the time I got to Miami and got back and found out what was happening. I had no way to ask. So we sacrificed the family. So sometimes if you just carry through on your mission, things aren't going well, it's going to be worth it in the long run.
Right.
That's all I got to say. And some of those guys that you played with in 2006, Nick Shefty.
Yeah.
When he came in, he was going through a rapid growth spurt. He had a hard time walking and chewing gum at the same time.
Yeah.
And here he was, NCAA finals. He put away the final ball. Shoot set in the middle, 31, kaboom. He did it. He hung in for 5, years.
Yeah.
He was on that second court most of the time.
Sure. With me.
That's right.
And Dennis Gonzalez too,
I wanted to kick Dennis out of school.
I know.
He wouldn't go to class. He's a very bright kid. He's a doctor now.
I know. Yeah.
And I don't know how he could sweet talk the professors into changing the grade. He did that. I don't know how the hell he did it. And I told him, Dennis, I'm kicking you out. And I told my senior associate athletic director, Patrina Long, I said, Patrina, I've had it with Gonzalez. She says, let me talk to him. Just one more time. Dennis, go see Patrina. She says, let him stay.
Yeah.
I think we're going to do it this time.
He's a good guy.
I know. See, my own experience, when I went to UCLA, PE was so easy for me. I didn't even go to class. The sun was out. I was at the beach trying to learn how to play volleyball. I didn't know how to play. I didn't know how to play beach volleyball. I never played volleyball until I got to UCLA. And then I made the team, learned it. But my professor, Glenn Eggstrom, who was the volleyball coach, I walked by his office one time in the men's gym where all my classes were. I was barefoot and sandy. He says, come on in here. He says, where are you going? I said, I'm going to class. And he says, my God. He says, next time you come by my office and walk into a class, I want to see a halo around your head. I want you, the professors, to think you have the halo effect. I want you to sit in the front row. I want you to go to class when you're supposed to. He says, you're just getting by. I was playing volleyball for him. I only saw him on Wednesday nights for 2 hours and at the match. He changed me because he cared enough to give me a few minutes.
Yeah.
When I was teaching school, I tried to change one kid a year in my class. I'd bring him into my office and have that talk. Somebody who was screwing off. Of course, at UCLA, I did that too.
Yeah.
And I tried to do it with Dennis, but I wasn't good enough. But Patrina did it. And it was such a delight to find out that he's a doctor now. Just amazing.
Yeah. And, just to finish my story there, I think what you're trying to say is, stay the course and finish the mission, right?
Yeah.
That's what
I'm saying.
And anyone listening, like I said, who's going through a tough time, just stay with it because, you don't want to have any regrets and the whole journey is short. You got plenty of time for life stuff after sport, so anyway, that's cool that we could talk about it openly like that, because it's a tough experience for me. One more thing, Coach, and I really appreciate your time here. Talk to me about fulfillment. What does fulfillment mean to you?
Well, I don't know. I haven't reached it yet, but
okay.
I just right now I'm trying to take care of my family the best I can and my friends. I have a group of friends that I play golf with. I play with a different group on same group every Wednesday, same group every Friday, same group every Tuesday, same group every Monday. Yeah, and Thursday I have a group. It's important to me. These are people I like and enjoy being with. And that's how I stay healthy and engaged with people. And I get it done at dawn because I'm not supposed to be out in the sun. We're the dawn patrollers, each group.
Okay.
A long round for us is 3 hours and 15 minutes. Okay. We try to be off the tee. I mean, certain groups are faster than others. When I'm playing with Ranger Tom, ex-lieutenant colonel in the Rangers, we're moving fast. Otherwise, he's waiting for you on the green when you're hitting your approach shot. You don't want to hurt him, so you got to keep up with it. But that's how I'm staying healthy. And then my family, of course, we got grandkids and, just checking and make sure everybody's doing okay. And
yeah.
That's enough for me right now. That's keeping me fulfilled right there.
That's great. That's great. Coach, this was awesome. Like I said, a full circle moment for me after all those years. And, I just really appreciate you taking the time and, sharing some of your mindset and some of your strategies and all those experiences. This was great. Appreciate you.
Well, thank you, Aaron. Good to see you again.
Yeah, you too. Don't go anywhere, okay? I'm just going to end this.
Okay.
For anyone listening, thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe, like, and share, and we'll see you on another episode of Within the Game. This episode is brought to you by DAF Global. If you're looking to start a podcast or you have a podcast and you're looking for editing services, hit up my guys, Oliver and Garrett at DAF Global. They're awesome. They help me with this podcast and they take care of all kinds of different services like editing and audio enhancement, and they're great to work with. They're also offering a 10% discount to all Within the Game listeners. So hit my guys up at DAF Global on Instagram and also on their website, www.dafglobal.co.uk.